taste is number one, because I want any old Tom, Dick and Harry to pick up one of these and go, this tastes amazing. Oh, wow. But it's also got 20 grams of protein in it, almost as the secondary, wow, this is great. Because that's how you win the mass market audience.
So, Brandt, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for the lovely Lulu covering me while I was sick. I'm still a bit sick, so apologies if I'm not sounding on point. I'll do my best not to make any unpleasant sounds into the microphone. Hence why I'm very happy that you're on hosting duties again today.
Yes, yeah. I mean, the fact you trust me to do it anyway, I think says something either about you or me. But anyway, Segun, thanks for coming on. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for inviting me.
Coming all the way over from Essex to West London. What we do usually on the podcast, first of all, is just get the guests to sort of introduce themselves. It'd be good to get tell us a bit about yourself and what your brand's about.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So my name's Segun Akinwoleola, founder of The Gym Kitchen. So our range is a range of meals. We've got pizzas, we've got grains, pouches, yogurts, and they're all available in the major multiples. So you're looking at Tesco, Asda, Morrison, Sainsbury's, Ocado, Co-op, etc. And yeah, prior to that, I had a FMCG background, so worked in beauty for a number of years before transitioning myself into this FMCG world, properly into food and drink. So yeah,
brilliant.
When did you found the brand?
So when did I set the brand up? So I trademarked it in 2016, and then registered as an actual company in 2017. So yeah, and then it's been a journey since then.
Sure. And this is what we wanted to first ask you about, really, is you've got a really interesting journey compared to a lot of other brands we've worked with and brands we've worked for, with regards to how you basically set everything up beforehand and then waited to get someone to buy it. So it'd be good to hear a bit more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing is actually what was I trying to achieve? So I was a frustrated gym goer, couldn't understand why healthy eating wasn't affordable, accessible, but most importantly, tasty.
Yeah.
So, I was buying meal prep, kind of almost doing the meal prep on Sunday evenings, chicken breast, broccoli, brown rice. I'm just like, being in FMCG, you're kind of like, surely there's a better way to do this. And why are ready meals not seen as a good category for people to buy into? It's all of these kind of brands that are almost stripping all the goodness out of it to go in all green traffic lights, or brands that are cult-like, kind of almost community cult type thing without mentioning them. So that was kind of a bit of the light bulb moment. But then for me, it was actually about, okay, so if I'm not going to be this D2C proposition, or I'm not going to, try and do ready meals on a small scale, you kind of actually just need to launch them on a mass anyway.
Yeah.
So obviously, having gone round to a number of different retailers, what one of my aims was to do was actually, I did it a different way. So I didn't actually have the product that I have out now ready when I was going to the retailers. I actually managed to get a meeting with a Morrison's buyer with some kitchen samples that kind of weren't really legit enough to launch anywhere. And I had no manufacturer whatsoever.
Okay.
So for me, it was actually about using that meeting to find a manufacturer, because he liked the proposition, but I didn't have anyone that could actually develop it for me. And that's where he then introduced me to someone, and almost, because before that, I'd actually been around the houses trying to find a ready meals manufacturer that were just like, this is too big scale for you. We can't work with you on this. Yeah. So it was almost like, well, find us a retailer, get some interest, and then come back to us and then build it that way, if you see what I mean.
Yeah. And was that a learning process that before, because like you say, you've been FMCG, but in beauty, before you went to the Morrison's buyer, were you aware that you needed these big volumes?
Exactly. Because it's chilled ready meals.
Short shelf life.
Short shelf life. We've got 7 days shelf life on our products. They're produced every couple of days. So you're not it's not like a drinks product where you can buy 50,000 and you can store them for 12 months. This is an ongoing thing. And in order for them to press the button, they're like, well, we need to see the consistency in order to actually make it work, the raw materials and everything else that comes in. So I kind of almost already knew that, but I still did have this thinking or understanding that maybe I could do a bit of Ocado and get away with it. But then the manufacturer's like, nah, that's not going to work. So you're almost then tied into this mission as to, do I then actually sway away from what I believe is the gap within ready meals and go down snack bars, or, kind of like biltong or something like that then helps me build the brand? But it just felt like the wrong thing to do, because the customer was saying, we've got a gap in meals. So when I talk about the customer, I'm talking about the consumer on the end.
Okay.
Because I spent a lot of time actually standing outside gyms, fitness centers, these slimming group type places. I'm trying to understand what do you do when you're, you need that quick and easy recipe, you need that convenient thing. People were talking about cooking, they were talking about scratch cooking, they were talking about things that they didn't really want to do, and you could see that.
Yeah.
And it was almost like, okay, there's definitely something here now. Am I going to go through the pain of doing that, not knowing it was going to take a long time before I could actually get on shelves?
Yeah, I think, in all honesty, if you'd have come to us at Tastehead with an inquiry like this, because we often get sort of ready meals or fresh, short shelf life project inquiries, one of the first things we say is, look, we're not saying you absolutely can't do this, but just be aware manufacturers' minimum order quantities will be per SKU, per item, per production run.
Yeah.
And if you're ambient, you might be able to get away with 4 production runs a year. If you're fresh, might be every other day. And so 5,000 units, like 4 times a year, versus, 200 times a year or whatever it is obviously very different. And so, it's something that we never want to say to people, don't do this, it's not going to work, because we know there are cases where people like yourself have made it work. And what I'm really looking forward to in this episode is figuring out exactly how you did it, and what worked for you, but also just getting some insight, because it was difficult. Because I think when we spoke before, a few weeks ago, you were saying that it took years and it didn't actually unfold how you initially anticipated or planned for it to. So maybe it'd be good to talk about just how and why it took so long, and how that route changed as it progressed.
Yeah. Absolutely. So I guess a lot of, just to touch on why it took so long. So trademarked the brand in 2016, and then set up the company officially probably the end of 2016, so into 2017. And that's when I started actually going round speaking to all the buyers, after having been to Morrison's and created it. We didn't launch until 2020. So that's 3 years of just whizzing round going, hey, are you interested? No. Hey, are you interested? No. Hey, are you interested? No. Whereas I do say to a lot of the small brands where you could almost do a production run tomorrow and literally launch the day after in a little coffee shop and really test it and really believe in it. But for me, the reason that I didn't do that, and I go back to, talking about biltong or talking about, kind of a protein bar, was because I could genuinely see the USP, and that nobody was trying to do what I was doing on a supermarket shelf. So it was almost like all the retailers could see that they had this gap in, how do we bring a younger consumer to the fixture? How do we bring better quality health to the fixture as well? The government talks about obesity, etc. How do we actually start to go on that journey of doing that? And brands will play a big part in that. So me knowing and understanding that is, I guess, what kept me going for those 3 years before we even got a chance to land on shelves. But yeah, it was a long, 3 years is a long time.
Yeah, exactly. And you didn't. So were you sort of working on other stuff while you were doing this?
Yeah,
it's almost in the evenings, the weekends, sort of thing.
Exactly. And that's another part of the challenge as well, right? So I was doing full-time job as head of sales at the Black Farmer whilst I was actually working on this project. But the good thing about that was he kind of turned into my business partner as well. So It then turned into okay, you can do this part-time whilst running the business part-time. But then, kind of COVID hit as well. Well, when COVID hit, I'll tell you the story in a second. But yeah, COVID is a whole nother nightmare of everything. But even just before, so 2017, I was still working for other companies. In 2018, then did a bit of consulting work. The battles you face are crazy, because I went from, kind of earning a decent salary to back to my graduate salary because I wanted to really try and, work 2 days a week whilst I'm working on this for 3 days a week, knowing that it might not land.
And probably working more hours than you've ever worked before.
Literally, yeah. And that's the crazy part that people don't really understand. But again, that's where I go. It just depends on what your end proposition is and where you see the USP. And I really talk about, kind of this lifestyle proposition that the Gym Kitchen is trying to build in. I want consumers to be able to pick up a yogurt, to be able to, breakfast, lunch, dinner. That's the kind of mission that we were on. That makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, this to me is great, because it's like, first you had this vision, which you've talked about a number of times about, knowing that there's something there for the consumer, for this type of consumer that wasn't there, and stuck with it. It's that sort of resilience and perseverance to go through 3 years without you know, not knowing if it was going to work, but you obviously had the faith in it going to work. That was the thing. But, you know, it's very, you know, very impressive.
Yeah. And when I sit here and think about it as well, I'm like, well, what kept me
did I do
going
that?
for those 3 years? What was wrong with me? Why didn't I just go and, you know, high-flying job and just earn some money? But yeah, but this is the thing, you know, you look back and you go, it was absolutely the right thing to do. But then I also say to some people, what was the feedback that you were getting that was forcing you to keep going? Because the feedback I was still getting was, oh, we like the idea, but it needs to be X, Y, Z. So let me give you a quick example, right? The initial product that I took to Morrison's was I call it a just add good carbs. So it was going to be just some chicken breast in like a nice sauce in a ready meal type tray. And my whole idea to try and be different was that actually people would just add their own carbs to it. So you then go and buy some, you know, some rice or some lentils or some whatever it was, and then you'd do it at home. But the feedback was, we like the brand name, we like the proposition, but actually what you need is a complete meal solution.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, well, they're not saying don't come back with anything. So here we go, nice little bite here. So then obviously I then go to the manufacturer and say, hey, Morrison's want you to work with us on this, that, and so on, kind of almost doing it that way. And then they're like, okay, if Morrison say they're willing to, you know, entertain this, let's see if we can develop some stuff together. So then we went back with a full meal solution. And then the feedback wasn't actually about the product. It was just about the market, or it was about space. So knowing that the feedback wasn't this brand's rubbish, the product's rubbish, was almost like an indicator that at the right time, a buyer will say yes to this. And then it's then about building it. So that's kind of what kept me going, in the sense that, you know, branding, they didn't say the branding was rubbish. They didn't say the product was rubbish. It was more about the environment. And if you can then start to think about, well, the environment's going to change in a year and a half's time. The environment's going to change at some point, because it always does. So how do we then, you know, kind of capitalize on that, as long as no other competitor came in to try and do what we were doing?
Yeah.
It's interesting, the point around whether complexity in a product is a good thing or a bad thing, because we often say to people, never underestimate just how lazy people are, consumers are. You know, just 100%. Even one little extra step, people will really be willing to pay extra to avoid it. But then you've got, on the other side, Rory Sutherland talks about this, where he sort of makes the point that sometimes complexity can add value, where he'll talk about the reason people love a £10 table from IKEA is because they actually think it's a £20 table, but the reason it's £10 is they've got to build it themselves. Whereas if it was already put together and it was £10, they'd probably think, oh, it's just a really cheap table. And you've got some examples in the food industry where He talks about another case. It was one of the either cake mix brands or pancake brands, and they actually found that by saying add an egg made people feel like they were doing some actual cooking rather than just adding water and increased value. But in things like ready meals, when it is all about convenience because people don't want to cook, you just can't underestimate how much people want everything to be done and as easy as possible.
Absolutely.
We spoke already at the start mainly around the products and how important that was, but the brand is just as important in something like this, of course, because you've got a very specific demographic that, you know, especially gym goers love a brand, very sort of inspired and have aspirational brands that they sort of want to be seen with, etc. So very brand centric demographic. But also within that, I suppose you've got your hardcore gym goers, you've got your sort of lifestyle gym goers, and you've got people who are just health conscious. And to be a successful brand, you've obviously got to balance all of those quite different consumers and need states and so on, and build trust with all of them as well. So maybe tell us a bit about the brand journey in terms of how you decided on the gym kitchen, and, you know, have you found that a challenge, having to appeal to different people with different needs?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess in terms of the gym kitchen, so the reason I named it the gym kitchen was because almost it felt like, all right, the 70 people say 70% nutrition, 30% exercise, right? So the food is more important than the actual exercise. So my thing was, okay, how can we then bring the gym home to your kitchen? And that was kind of the whole essence of the idea, right? So that's why, you know, within that, we then had to think about the mass market audience. So you start to look at, as the Tesco, Sainsbury's, Morrison's, Co-op, Ocado, we're not going to win by only having that hardcore gym audience, because it's a small, you know, it's kind of a small population, but significantly growing. But also when you look at that hardcore gym goers, you know, kind of lifestyle / diet, they are really into meal prep. You know, they are weighing their food. They are, you know, protein shakes, supplements. It's all that stuff. So for me, it was about actually, this is the name, the Gym Kitchen, will help with that audience because obviously it's got gym in it. But actually where the real win is with just that all-round happy, healthy eater. So almost like a holistic health type brand. So what I needed to do with the branding agency to make that work was, how can we make it have mass market appeal in the colors? So that's where we were like, okay, bright colors that actually speak about quality ingredients, that will actually speak about, you know, kind of what the brand can deliver for you on taste. And that's why for me, taste is number one, because I want any old Tom, Dick and Harry to pick up one of these and go, this tastes amazing. Oh, wow. But it's also got 20 grams of protein in it, almost as the secondary, wow, this is great. Because that's how you win the mass market audience. And that's what we're trying to do significantly well. It does take a long time to actually create the products, because once again, I say that taste has to be at the forefront of everything we do. So it's really hard to balance, you know, where we work with product developers, etc. But when we get it right across our number of different ranges. But yeah, so for me, it's the hardcore gym audience. Obviously, they're super important, but really the biggest part of our business is all about this happy, healthy eater, someone that just wants to have fun with it. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, healthy eating used to be bland, boring, you know, everything that nobody wanted to do. You know, I keep talking about food's emotional. You know, you want to sit down for dinner and have something that's really nice, that fills you up. One of the stats or the things we were looking at when we was creating the meals initially was everybody was like making the meals at 320 grams. And you were going, well, that's not filling anybody up at.
No, I was going to say, you need 2 of those.
So yeah, this is it. You need 2 of them. But we were just like, well, what if we push the boundaries a little bit and go from 320 to 400 and see what happens there? And the consumers were just like, oh, this is so much more filling than some of the other products that are out there, etc. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to offer them value, taste, convenience, all at affordable prices, really. And that's the That's
what you always say, isn't it, about taste? It's like got to be number one.
Taste has to be like,
no one will buy it.
Even when there's a lot of functionality in something like this, it's interesting to hear. You know, you say from your experience, people still looking for taste.
Looking for taste, and there is you know, kind of our brands out there now that are kind of almost like we're seen as the functional brand. So taste doesn't matter because it's all function, but that only gets you so far, because at some point people go, oh, do you know what? I'm tired of this now. I'm not enjoying it. And that's why for me, taste, and I'm glad to hear that you guys think the exact same thing, because a lot of people are deviating from what products should really be, and that is super tasty.
Yeah, absolutely.
We do a lot of tastings whenever we're doing any project we work on. We're tasting the competitive set, and it varies a lot. There are some really good ones out there.
Still a lot of opportunity.
There's a lot of opportunity.
Still opportunity on taste in protein, in the protein functional category, and in just sort of diet foods in general. Definitely. Still a lot of opportunity.
Yeah. And it is hard as well, because obviously you're trying to mask the taste of like pea protein. And,
sure.
You know, kind of all of those kind of things, which are now a more functional ingredient, you know, soy, etc. How do you mask the taste of those? It's hard, but you need to find a way to make these products really appeal to the masses, otherwise they don't work. And that's why we've seen, you know, kind of plant-based start declining and all that kind of stuff. Really.
Absolutely. Finding alternatives, which we're often often doing. What I think be interesting to talk about is a bit more about the sort of almost technical side, the manufacturing side, because a lot of our clients are, you know, that's something that they're maybe not so well versed at, but it's something they're interested in to understand how to get that product to market. And obviously with something like your initial product, which is your ready meals, you've got short shelf life, and you know, it's about how did you sort of work with that, securing the shelf space, reducing the waste, which is obviously a big problem in any sort of chilled thing.
Because no one wants to cover that. The brand, the retailer, everyone's keen to.
And obviously the manufacturer does some of that, but it'd be good to understand your experience of that.
Yeah, cool, absolutely. So I guess the good thing about working in chilled short shelf life is we found a manufacturer that was already selling products to the retailers. So we got a lot of understanding and got a lot of knowledge from them, and we still do. So any manufacturer that we approach, we try and approach via a recommendation from a retailer. And I'll give you a quick example. So, you know, you talk about how we're in a number of different categories, right? So we went from chilled meals into frozen meals was our first jump. Okay. And that was actually driven by the Asda buyer at the time, because he was like, oh, I've got a brand here, but you know, a brand is declining, a big well-known brand is declining. I need something that's going to be a bit more challenger, and obviously we're not going to say no. So we're like, oh, who do you recommend we should speak to? And that is always the good thing, because then you know they've got the safety and supply and the knowledge and the understanding of everything and how it works. So we were doing a lot of learning from them in terms of how the supply chain works, you know, how often, you know, the products are made, how often they're delivered into the different depots, etc. The wastage piece is an interesting one. And, you know, there are certain times of the year where wastage is higher than when it isn't. But the good thing about what we've built is, so I spent all of those years in terms of whilst we had no listings on building a community. And I built a community particularly on social. So we were like posting memes, but I was also going around doing interviews with influencers, just talking to them about their journeys and their stories, and almost trying to use them as a bit of a platform for them to come on board. So we had probably about 5,000 followers before we'd even like launched at all on Instagram. So because we had a bit of a community, and then the As the Buyer only put us in kind of a small amount of stores to start off with, but it was enough for the manufacturer to press the button. That's kind of what helped with that whole wastage piece, because then you're going, actually the rate of sales are really good because you're in a lower amount of stores, and now we can just keep on building on that. And then the more we kept building on that, the more we got more of a brand presence, the more we then kept building on community. So one of the things a lot of people won't see is sometimes people talk about, you know, you've got to shout the loudest. Actually, we're in like fitness groups. Personal trainers are recommending us. We're in communities where you can't actually see that we are being talked about and we're being recommended. So because of that, as we expand out into more places, we become more accessible. So we don't then have that challenge of wastage. And obviously, then it comes back to, if we do, because, you know, let's say we've got 7 SKUs in one retailer, there's always going to be a tail, right? Yeah. What we do is we try and make sure that we're consistently on the forefront, ready to evolve on what those SKUs look like. So working on MPD as far out as possible to go, okay, these 2 aren't working, we've got a new recipe, let's do this. Or we speak to the buyers as well and we go, all right, guys, if these aren't working in this many stores, why don't we actually reduce them, because there's still a core customer here that likes this, and then go there? Because that's the best way to protect your brand, is work as closely as possible with the retailers to ensure that there aren't really any surprises. Do you know what I mean? Like, we've launched products that have absolutely tanked, and we're both just sitting here like, yep, okay, it's not working. So, you know, we've got to pull them. You know, there's no point in me, the manufacturer, and the retailer losing money. And I guess there's a real realistic nature about how we work with things, you know, as long as it's reasonable and as long as we're all communicating. That is how we really manage it. But yeah, the wastage piece is about how you actually drive rate of sale, not thinking about trying to get wastage down. It's trying to look at it the other way.
Yeah, and like you say, keeping in communication with the buyers, because you don't want them coming to you and saying, we've got a problem here.
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly it. You want to be going, all right, this is what's going on. Yeah. These are probably a little bit higher than the others. How do we, you know, kind of reduce it? How do we look at stuff like case size changes? Do you know what I mean? Like if we're in a case size of 6, does a case size of 4 work? It might be a little bit more costly, but it will actually reduce that waste anyway. Do you know what I mean? So it's just being proactive with those elements.
Yeah. And sorry, go on.
Well, I was just going to say, there's a couple of things you said there I really liked. One was talking about how you've stretched the brand into new categories and your MPD, because this brand very much started off with that sort of almost blue sky creative thinking about doing something that's not been done before. But as with a lot of other brands, when it came to sort of future MPD, there's so much to be said for being more pragmatic and looking at what low-hanging fruit have you got just within, what can your existing manufacturer do? What is already within the distribution network chain of the retailers, etc. Because I think people, when they often look at products that are being innovated and so on, don't realise that a lot of the time, a lot of products will be coming out for reasons like that, not just because they think this is the biggest opportunity we can do. It might just be that it's the best opportunity, because it might be third in terms of the potential volume that we could hit with it, but we know we've got, you know, we've got certain things that are already set in place that just give it that better chance of success. So I thought that was just a good sign there, where you've swung both ways in terms of creative, bold, blue sky thinking, but then also coming back to being pragmatic and low hanging fruit. The other thing I was going to say,
just to jump in on that as well. So when you start to look at, you know, kind of almost touch points, right? So because we don't have millions and millions of pounds worth of marketing budgets, what you can actually see is, if you spot our brand in one place and you enjoy it there, you might then go and buy it elsewhere in another category. Do you see what I mean? So you find frozen, you then find chilled. If you find our food to go, you then find elsewhere. So it's almost like a really nice marketing tool as well, where, like I say, what we're trying to build is this lifestyle proposition. I want consumers to be like, I'm just a gym kitchen shopper, you know, and I buy their meals. I have their yogurts for breakfast. I have their, you know, something for dinner, etc., etc. That's what I'm trying to build, and being in those different touch points allows you to grow a brand quicker. Because of that.
More visibility.
Definitely.
The other thing I really like was how you built an audience before you even launched, and it's something that people talk to us a lot about and have the desire to do, but don't always know how to do it. And so, could you just tell a little bit more about how you did that, and just like how much of an impact did it have having those 5,000 people when you launched, and what ways did they help maybe?
Yeah, absolutely. So how did I do that? So I first of all, I had just set up an Instagram page which was called The Gym Kitchen. It was kind of like posting memes a little bit. But then when I went to a meeting with another brand that I was kind of just doing a bit of consulting for, and the buyer turned around and said, "Oh, but you've got like 200 followers. How are you going to send people to our shops?" So I'm sitting there going, "Oh, that's true, isn't it?" So I need to find a way to, before I actually launch this brand, get as many followers as I possibly can, because then it gives you that, oh, we haven't even launched and we've got this many followers already. So we've got some engagement. So that's why I then went on this journey of how, you know, starting to piece together and coming up with a little bit of a strategy on how do I get Instagram as big as I can. So there was the memes part, but then there was also the community engagement part. And that's where I was talking to influencers. I was going around asking, you know, any Tom, Dick and Harry I could, you know, what do they think of my proposition? Would they sit down with me for 10 minutes and just have a chat? And then they were sharing that they, you know, they really loved sitting down with me, and they were really like looking forward to the Gym Kitchen coming out. So it was almost like a bit of a pre-sale in, you know, the Gym Kitchen's going to come out at some point. Obviously it took a lot longer than I would have anticipated, but because we had all of these people going, oh, when's it coming out? When's it coming out? It really helped for then, when I was then doing the buyer pitches, I was showing them all of this kind of information and how I'm building a little bit of a community, how I'm trying to go on this journey of, you know, bringing fitness together, etc. And then the thing is, when we launched in January, because we'd done that pre-build of everything, all of the people that I'd spoken to, all the influencers, they were like, oh my goodness, this is great. It's finally out. Because they almost felt like they were on the journey with me on this. They were part of it. I was building it with them. So then they absolutely loved it. They were all sharing it. And that's what got us off to a really good start to then enable us to, you know, kind of really grow from there. But obviously then the stumbling block of COVID.
It does remind me, we've talked before about the brand Liquid Death, you know, the one American water brand, which did exactly that. They built a following before they even had a product.
They did adverts before they even had a product.
Exactly.
Such a good case study for that sort of approach.
So what I was going to go on to, is that you obviously had a lot of experience in sales. You said head of sales. I don't know how much you had in marketing, MPD. Obviously, you talked about you did your own food, but actually MPD is different to, you know, even being a good sort of home cook or whatever. And then there's the other bit, which is the technical side, shelf life, etc. It'd be good to understand how, you know, some bits you had a lot of expertise, some less so. How did you sort of fill in those gaps, overcome those ones that you needed more information in?
Yeah, so being in sales is really, I guess it's a real good foundation. And what I always say to a lot of people is if they come and they say, oh, I don't really have an idea, but I really want to run my own business. Most of the time I say to them, well, go and work in the type of company that you want to run, because you will learn so much more and you'll learn a lot more on other people's money as opposed to your own money. So because I'd worked in sales gives you really good exposure to everything that goes on in the company, right? So you're working with the marketing team because you're almost seen as a face. So you're trying to find out what are the marketing team doing in terms of brand plans. You're going and dealing with logistics because you need your stock there to be sold. You're dealing with finance because you need to make sure that you're getting the money in. So actually sales is probably one of the best things to do in terms of getting that exposure. So even though I wasn't an expert in the other areas like MPD, etc., I kind of had a really good grasp and good understanding. And then for me, it was then about, you know, kind of almost leaning on people that had more knowledge than me. So, you know, there's a company called the Mind Collective. You know, we worked with those guys a lot on what should MPD look like. We've obviously our branding agency, you know, Liquid Studio on, okay, what does the branding need to look like? So really getting help from people out there. MPD, it's our manufacturers have chefs that they work with. They've got technical managers for days. You know, they are these big global companies that have all of this kind of stuff and all these capabilities. So how do we work together? Because it's almost like it really is a win-win. We have the brand, they have the capabilities. Let's win together. And that's the journey that I've always tried to bring everybody on. And then obviously it's then, you know, kind of strengthening the team and ensuring that you've got a team that's set up to deliver the plan that you've kind of almost set out.
Yeah, nice. You talked quite a lot already about MPD and so forth, and quite a lot, I'd like to sort of go on to that. That's our sort of speciality anyway. That's what we like. And also EPD, you mentioned how you need to move sometimes when something's not working well. Sometimes you can put in a new line, but also you can just change that in some way, whether it's the recipe or whether it's format or case size or whatever, you know. So it'd be good to understand. You've talked about the manufacturer helping you with it, but have you been to, how much of it you've done yourself? How much have you used any agencies, or have you done a combination of them? So a bit of sort of insight into that would be interesting.
Yeah. So a bit of both, really, to be fair. So we've used and worked with, you know, kind of external agencies where our manufacturers might not have the capabilities to work on something. Now, I guess the challenge with that is the real understanding as to the machinery and everything else that they've got and how people marry up, right? You can create, what you learn very quickly is you can create a great product at home or in a kitchen. When you scale it up, it turns completely different. And we've had a bit of a horror story in that. You know, we created this really cool product in a kitchen, and then once it got scaled up, it was not as nice, you know, kind of thing. So, and then didn't work as a result of it. So, you know, kind of then got delisted. So again, it's how can you ensure that if you are doing that external piece, they either already work with manufacturers of the same ilk, or you marry those guys up and almost do it together. I always say that things like drinks, etc., are probably a bit easier, but when you start to, meals are even easier, but when you start to get into real technical products, I don't know, like desserts and stuff like that, it can be very, very tricky in terms of doing that.
Which is what brands
so well, I worked in desserts and bakery sites for a few years, and it's there's some categories, like you say, easier to scale up than others. That's for sure. One of the things, because I know we're coming to the end of the questions, I think we've covered everything that we wanted to, apart from one really key thing, which I know you're passionate about, and I'm really keen to discuss with you, because it was really interesting speaking to you before the podcast, and that's your passion for shining a light on the struggles of being a black founder within the food and beverage industry, and not just that industry, but you know, obviously that's your experience. Absolutely. And I know you spend quite a bit of time championing sort of change in that sort of side of things. So it'd be good to just get a bit of insight into what you found in your experience, what you've heard and seen with other people, and what you're doing or you think people should be doing to sort of make things better. Yeah,
no, absolutely. And I guess one of the things is you don't realise these are things until you're actually asked to come and speak about them. So, you know, the first time I really stood up and spoke about some of the challenges that I faced and, you know, kind of my thinking on diversity was at Tesco in May, I think it was last year. They were like, you know, we're creating this thing called the Black Action Plan because we want to ensure that there are more opportunities for black employees, for black entrepreneurs, but also for black community. And this was all in the wake of the George Floyd murder, unfortunately. So, so for me, it then got me thinking as to, okay, what have I actually experienced? So you're kind of almost going backwards a little bit to go, oh gosh, what have I actually been through? And then I actually started looking at stats and facts. And the first one was about how many employees are there in these organisations that are black. And it's so low that we can't even actually account for a number. You then go, okay, what are the actual challenges in terms of trying to launch a business as a black entrepreneur? So I've kind of almost done things a little bit differently in, do you know what, I'm going to work, I'm going to save up all my money, I'm going to earn less, I'm going to do all of this. Whereas most people would just go, oh, I've got a family member that might be able to give me 30 grand because they do a family and friends round. Whereas obviously most of us are first, just a second generation. So we don't have that money to be able to do that. So then you look to VC funding, but they then don't think black people have the skills to be able to deliver the same as, you know, kind of their counterpart. So I think the stat is like less than 1% of VC funding goes to black entrepreneurs. And that's even smaller or lower for black female entrepreneurs. And then you go, okay, well, that's challenging. So how many black owned brands are there actually in the supermarkets? And I was counting and it was probably about 7. out of the thousands of brands there. And you're like, okay, well, I know we're 3% of the population, but actually that's still not representative of, do you know what I mean? Yeah. So you go, okay, so, you know, I sit down with Tesco and we talk about that. I sit down with some of the other retailers and we talk about that and we go, yeah, we really need to change this, don't we? And then they're asking me, you know, so what are some of the experiences that you've had? So I still remember the first time I kind of almost thought, oh gosh, this is a challenge, was when I was at a company and I was given a company car, and it was like an Audi A5. Proper fancy car, and I was on the way driving to Lloyd's Pharmacy to try and flog some makeup. And unfortunately on the way there I was stopped by the police, which isn't a new thing to me. It was kind of just like, oh, this is, you know, this is normal. But I was late to the meeting and they knew that I was never late to meetings. So when I got to the meeting, I was kind of like, do I tell them that I was actually stopped by the police? Because then they'll probably take the car off me and all sorts. And so I kind of just was just like, oh no, sorry, traffic, etc., etc. But for me, it felt like I wasn't empowered enough to just go, look, I'm black. These things happen. You know, I need to just tell you, kind of thing. So it was kind of almost like, well, how do we come on this journey to kind of almost sort that out? Then another one was just whenever I used to go to the retailer with, you know, kind of samples, carrying a box, I'd always be mistaken for a delivery driver, where I've had like good 20, 30-minute discussions as to arguing with them. They're going, deliveries go around the back. And I'm like, no, I'm actually here for a meeting with a buyer. But they'd never seen someone that looked like me in a brand owner position, in a head of sales position. Do you know what I mean? And that's a challenge. And then the last one I like to touch on is I was sat in a meeting with a buyer, and I was finished sharing that I was from East London, grew up in East London, gangs, gun crime, etc. And then I was trying to like open the samples box, you know, polystyrene box, tape around the sides of it. And he turned around and said, oh, how can you be from East London, but you haven't got a knife on you ready to open that up? And you're kind of like, oh my goodness, I've really got to go through these stereotypes just to try and launch a brand. And particularly when you're in a buyer meeting, you're kind of sat there going, oh, this is not helpful. So I didn't understand the actual power in sharing those to make everybody think, actually, this isn't okay. Because for me, it was just normal. It was just hey, this is everyday life. You got to rock up and you got to do it. So having done that and having shared that with Tesco, they were just like, yeah, we need to do a lot more. And then everybody else started to say, we really need to do a lot more. We need to change those stats from, you know, kind of 7 businesses to how can we get hundreds out of here? And everyone's now coming on the journey. So they've got some initiatives that are out there, you know, kind of, like I talk about, Tesco have their Black Action Plan. Sainsbury's had Thrive, where they were helping 10 Black-owned brands. And then you have Co-op, who, you know, kind of give 25% of their apiary to a diverse kind of audience. And then Ocado and some of the others are trying to set these things up bit by bit. But yeah, it's really, like I say, a passion for me. But I never wanted to, because I never thought about, you know, Black-owned or being black or anything like that. I'm just an entrepreneur trying to win. And that's what it's always been about. But unfortunately, in order to bring the next generation through with me, there are those challenges that
and so much of it's about awareness. Like, and now these initiatives happening, and I'm really glad that we can give you, albeit a very small platform, but you know, we can talk about it here today, because when you were telling me that story about you being mistaken for a delivery driver, you sort of, it's easy to maybe chuckle at it a little bit, but the sad thing that it unfolds, it highlights, is that there's still a lot of prejudice there that people don't even realise, because everyone will probably say, not racist, all about equal opportunities, etc. But people still, without them even realising, because any of those people that are mistaken you, they'd probably say, oh, I'm, you know,
and
against
I
racism
don't even think they're probably not racist. Do you know what I mean? And that's what I say.
Is there, and so raising awareness about these things is hopefully at least one of the things that you can do to, you know, inspire change.
Yeah, definitely, and that's what I hope it does.
Yeah, really good to share that. Yeah.
Thank you, man.
What we do at the end, we ask all our guests the same sort of questions. It's a nice little thing to do. The first one we ask is, which brands inspire you most? And it may be a food or drink brand. It may not be at all. So it'd be
which brands inspire me most? So obviously closer to home, I'd say Strong Roots. Really like what they've done to premiumise the frozen category and do things very differently, which nobody's been able to do.
Yeah.
And then I'd say probably further away from home, I just love the story of Gymshark. You know, Ben in his, you know, kind of pizza delivery guy, sewing some clothes, and now £1 billion business, which everybody's buying. Utilised the living daylights out of influencer marketing and just got in there really early, but has also remained within the business, leading it. That for me is really, really cool.
It's such an inspiring story, and he's a very inspiring character. I saw him on a podcast recently. Is he now the youngest self-made billionaire.
Self-made, yeah, that's right.
And when he was asked about that, and you could tell he was being genuine, and I think you can tell that from his actions in terms of how he still operates in the business. He says he doesn't really like that because he doesn't think that it's a fair reflection on things, these sort of numbers about billionaire. You know, there's a lot of things that go into making that, but he's just, like you say, still working. You can just tell he's so passionate about the brand, the business, the people and everything. Yeah, really inspiring.
Yeah, because someone like him
brand.
could just be sitting on the beach right now, couldn't he? But they're still behind it, still
I
trying
don't know.
to grow,
Yeah, I tried to think, would I still be if you had, if you were that successful?
I'd probably be in a restaurant. But that's my beach.
Yeah, that is your beach. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Awesome.
What we also ask often is great piece of advice you might have had that might have inspired you to start this, or just something else that has really
so one of the things I actually was heard the other day was actually, what got you here won't get you there. And for me that is, and I'd heard that like quite a while ago as well, and for me that's super key, because you've also got to be ever evolving and ever changing and ever adapting. And if you can do that, you will get far, and you just don't just think, okay, I passed this course, now I'm here. It's now about, how do you start to change your mentality? Yeah. How do you start to think differently? How do you start to learn more? How do you start to grow more? So, yeah.
That really resonates with me, actually, because with sort of the role at Tastehead, I'm often finding, trying to find the balance of, don't want to put yourself down unfairly, etc. Whether it's as a team or something, whatever it is. But you always want to be open to, like, is there a different way we could be doing things, whether it's like right or wrong, and we often have conversations about that, and we try to sort of have that within the team in terms of, look, whenever a challenge throws up, a lot of the time maybe there wasn't something we could have done differently, maybe it's not genuinely our fault or whatever it might be, and you want to sort of say, you want to inspire the team to be thinking, like, let's constantly be assessing ourselves and be questioning things, but not in a way where you're getting yourselves down about it or knocking confidence. It's just about having the right mindset of, confident with what we're doing now, we're doing the best we can, but never have the sort of arrogance or the ego to think that there's not maybe something we could change, because I think a lot of the times you just got to be pragmatic about things. It's 100%. Not as simple as like whether it's right or wrong or whatever. It's like to get the best results.
And also give things a go. We've done things where it's like that might be a way forward, and actually it hasn't worked, and sort of go, okay, it didn't work. Let's
same as you said with some of the NPD. You don't be too emotionally attached or wedded to things.
This is it, and that's why I guess the retailers like working with us, because some founders do get so caught up and so passionate about this product, and this is it, the be all and the end all. Whereas from the beginning, I was like, okay, if you think it can't be just a chicken breast and I'll go and pick up the other bits, what do you think it can be? And we went and then created that, because our vision is lifestyle. And then you touched on something earlier, just a minute ago as well. It's how can you, failure is actually a lesson. Yeah. But if you don't fail, then you're not trying. Yeah. And that for me is super important, because if everything's going right and nothing ever's going wrong, then you're probably really doing it really safe.
Yeah, exactly.
Really safe.
Makes me think of that book. I think I mentioned it previously. Is it Black Box Thinking?
Yeah,
where it talks about how certain is it the aviation industry or something, where they basically they just always are making things to fail, because that's how you learn.
And you don't want to fail up in the sky.
Yeah, no, exactly.
That's it. Yeah, exactly. Well, obviously, failure is costly, but it's how you limit that, right?
It's also that thing, and we've all worked with a number of different people. Is some people will take risks and are prepared to fail, and there's a lot of people who are very risk averse, and it's that risk aversity where yes, it's safe, but it's harder to sort of really progress and progress quickly and well. Top tips for 2024 for a food or drink brand, what would yours be?
Sort of starting one?
I guess find your USP, and actually a proper unique USP, or a community you're tapping into. And the reason I say this is because you go to trade shows, you go to events, and you see a lot of products that are the same thing, but it's just maybe a different flavour of it or something like that. How will you really stand out from the crowd? Because it's extremely congested. So find your USP, be willing to learn. A founder's job is actually to do a lot of stuff. It's sales, it's marketing, it's finance. So try and be an expert in as many of those areas as you can, or find someone that can help you on that journey. You know, so I talk about, you know, if you're starting off early and you've got a community, find a co-founder, do it together with them on this journey, because then it takes a lot of the pressure away in terms of trying to deliver that. And then what else would I say? Yeah, I guess I'd just say be passionate, but also pragmatic.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Just because you can be as passionate as you can possibly be about your product, but you've also actually got to go, maybe this isn't right for this place and it will work in this place. Or maybe this isn't the actual flavour and taste that people actually really want, and I'm just caught up and I'm just feeling the love of it.
Yeah.
They're the kind of things I'd say.
Good. Obviously, food and drink is a big part of your life. We'd like to know what your sort of, these could be combined, desert island dish, but also what your favourite restaurant is. So they may cross over, they may not at all.
Yeah. They don't cross over at all, to be fair. So I say a favourite, I'm a steak fan, so probably like Hawksmoor.
Yeah.
And desert island dish would actually be a home dish, so a Nigerian dish, my heritage, and it'll probably be like jollof rice,
Nice.
plantain, and
That's
fried
about
chicken
yesterday.
and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, nice.
Yeah, lovely. A book, podcast, or another resource that you'd recommend to our listeners?
Yeah, so obviously it depends on what industry you're in, right? But there are some things that can help. So Brand Growth Heroes, I really like that, because you get a lot of founder stories, but also on how they scaled up. Then, you know, kind of the bait ones like Diary of a CEO, etc. Yeah, I kind of really enjoy that. But then also the High Performance podcast. Really enjoy that too.
Jake Humphrey.
Yeah, Jake Humphrey. And then in terms of books, there's one book called Will It Make the Boat Go Faster? And it's by Ben Davis Huntley, I think his name is. So he's an Olympic rower, and he's talking about in everything you do, if you ask that question, will it make the boat go faster? It makes you actually start to drop stuff. So he went to it on the extreme where it was like, you know, going out for beers tonight, will it make the boat go faster in the morning? Nah, probably not. So I'm not going to go out. But if you have that mindset and that philosophy, it will actually make you start questioning the different things that you're doing, you know. So spending, you know, kind of 4 hours on an Instagram post, but is that going to get us to where we need it to get to if it's not the right thing? And that for me is really exciting. Yeah. It's a really good book.
Excellent. Last of all, it'd be good to know what's going on in your world in the future. Any news you can share?
So yeah, we're always looking at new products, of course, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
So without sharing exactly what those products are, we're looking at, you know, how do we expand a bit more in ambient? So we've obviously got a really nice, strong, chilled range. How do we look at MPD? So refreshing the brand. But then, you know, kind of the wider pieces, how do we start to look at export markets, for instance? You know, if you look at Ireland, we haven't really got a footprint in Ireland. We haven't got a footprint in Europe. America, they actually pay proper money for food. So how could we get out there and potentially shake it up? So yeah, the vision is to be global. Obviously, it's going to take time to get there. But yeah, we want to go on that journey, and yeah, it's just making sure that we've got the right people and the right partners to do that. So yeah, that's kind of a
Excellent.
Really exciting, and really inspiring. We'll be watching this year and beyond with great interest. Definitely.
Yeah. Well, thanks a lot for coming on. It's been brilliant. Thanks.
No worries. Thank you for having me, man. It's been a pleasure.
Cheers. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe. And for more information, please visit tastehead.com. We hope you join us for our next episode.